Today's program is presented as part of the Wignall Museum's Home Edition, a series of curated artist talks, workshops, and discussions featuring artists and cultural workers. My name is Rebecca Trewick. I'm the director and curator of the Wignall Museum. The Wignall Museum is a teaching museum and interdisciplinary art space that introduces Chaffey College students, faculty, staff, and community members to innovative contemporary art objects, practices, and ideas. We want to take a moment to recognize that we are situated on the Rancho Cucamonga campus of Chaffey College, which resides on the traditional and unceded lands of the Tongva people. We offer our respect to the elders, both past, present, and future. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Justin and then hand the floor over to him. Justin is an independent designer, activist, and collaborator living in Omaha, Nebraska, focused on making it beautiful, moving people to action, and getting good things done. He works primarily with community organizations, political campaigns, and change-making entities in need of branding, graphic design, web design, and art direction. His self-initiated projects and collaborations explore ways to move forward important causes and ideas with design, art, and other forms of creative expression. So please welcome Justin Kemerling.
I like to approach design by thinking about trying to make design matter. And so this will be a presentation, discussion, and review on the subject of design in the middle of everything. The middle being like the middle of the country, and then also the middle being like in the middle of this crazy tumultuous time in this country specifically. And so I think it always helps to have some context. I gave you a singles reference. So that's one thing. I think like there are three things about me you should know. I was in a punk band in college. I love the Clash and a lot of those punk rock sensibilities, DIY ways to do things, kind of dovetails into a grassroots aesthetic, punk rock attitudes. Like we didn't have any money and we just made things in our own kind of weird way, from songs to short films to design. So punk rock foundation is like definitely informs a lot of the work that I do. I became very interested in political science in college. This is a poster by James Vittore, who is a very great designer that I admire and look up to. I think he's probably 10 or so years older than I am. This is one of his posters. He made lots of posters that made him very famous in the design world. And so I tried to apply political science and the readings that I did in college to a profession, and that profession happened to be design. So taking kind of like Howard Zinn, those sorts of like Noam Chomsky, like political left writers and thinkers, and like trying to apply that into a modern career that existed. And so I also am from Nebraska, which is in the middle of the country. You don't get any, you probably get bonus points if you know where it is. I actually had a client the other day who was like, where do you live? A lot of people don't know where Nebraska is. It's in the middle of the country. I live in Omaha. It is about, the Omaha Council Bluffs area, metro area, has 1.2 million people who live there. So that's like a middle-sized city. I live in an older part of the city. We have lots of good food. Connor Oberst in Bright Eyes is from here. He is my age, if that also helps give you any context. And so, yeah. I like Instagram. That's probably my favorite social media network. So here's some shots that may give you a little bit more visual info on me. I like President Obama a lot. I love the Clash. I like to vote. So I think I'm going to talk about work, but I think like the poster is like something you can always kind of keep in mind when I'm going through the work. I think like the poster is probably the purest form of visual communication. You got like a 2x3 foot space. In a flash, you must arrest the viewer's attention of a passerby, alter his or her perception, change it, reinforce it, make it see something differently, surprise, delight, inspire, motivate, like those kind of things like you're all trying to do in a poster. And you don't have an infinite scroll, you don't have a GIF, you don't have video, you don't have a lot of things that like screens provide, even though the poster can be kind of, these are some old, this was 2005. It was just I tried to find like an organization that I thought was doing interesting stuff. And I was like, hey, I want to make some posters for you. And so I worked with the community organizer on this project to get liquor licenses removed from a town that was exploiting Native Americans and their distress by profiting off of their alcoholism. And it was a pretty terrible situation. And so we made posters for this march that we did. And I've just always really liked posters. And so here's some that I made during Iraq wartime. This was about immigration. And so this was like my way to kind of use design to try to say something. And I knew I wasn't really going to be an artist. I didn't really have that kind of thinking. I was always kind of looking for a problem to solve or an opportunity to find and use design to make that issue seemingly give it more attention. This was for the ACLU a few years ago. This was a campaign out in Los Angeles, some Obama stuff. And so my business that I've been doing now for over 10 years in a quarter, we work with progressive change makers and do-gooders is basically how I framed it, and that has become the work that we take on. And I think, everybody says design is all about intention. And so like in the process and practice of design, you're intentional in what you're making, a logo, a brand, a website, a space. And so I wanted to be very intentional about the career and the work that I was going to do. And so before I set out 10 years ago to work on my own, I sat down and I wrote out these principles on paper. And so I was like, okay, now I can always refer back to them. So I wanted to do work that is part of things, experiments, delights, is optimistic, gives a damn, is community-minded, moves people to action, points us in a direction, picks a side / annoys certain people, makes things better, and has heart. And so that was what I wanted the work that I was going to do to encompass in some way. I had to have a few of these for the project to make sense. And so I'll just kind of talk about 5 examples of that really quick. Specific projects that I think do one of those things really well. And so one of those, I wanted to do work that moves people to action. And so this was for a group it was for Bold, Nebraska is the organization, but they became known as the Pipeline Fighters. It was a multi-year, multi-channel campaign to stop the Trans-Canada Pipeline, also known as the Keystone XL Pipeline. This is still going on all these years later. And so this was a poster that we made. There was a study that came out. The corporation had said that the pipeline expected to have 10 leaks over the life of the pipeline, which still seems like a lot when you're talking about a pipeline that's going over the aquifer, which is the largest underground freshwater resource in the country, stretches from Nebraska to Texas. And so the pipeline was going to go over this. And so we made a poster showing this underground water resource. And there was an independent study that was done that said that there would be 91 leaks over the life of the pipeline. So we put all the leaks on this poster for effect. And yeah, sold it to raise money. And so we did a lot of stuff around, it's like this was my first major kind of client project when I was going out on my own. And we did, all the branding for the organization, but then it became like a really good opportunity to do lots of other stuff in terms of, campaigns. This was a clean energy campaign. This was a campaign to get people to vote for inclusive cities, to protect the land. So it became an opportunity to bring design to all these issues that we thought were important and visualize them and get people inspired to get involved, to vote, to get involved in their community. This one, we actually branded the Ogallala Aquifer, made this little mark, worked with the typographer to make some custom letters. It was actually voted America's best tasting water by this organization. And so we wanted to play that up and brand the aquifer so that people would know that like, hey, this is like a pretty good thing you have going on here, middle of the country with all this great water below it. Maybe don't screw it up by putting a dirty pipeline over it and threatening that. And so we made some patches out of that. This is Ben. He was an activist on the ground. He's got a couple patches there, got a pipeline fighter bandana. So like this was there were lots of like legal things that happened. So, they have to do State Department reviews of energy projects. And so this was out in Western Nebraska where they had a hearing with the State Department, and you could go to this event, but you couldn't bring signs. And so we all brought our bandanas. And so whenever anybody was speaking that was in favor of stopping the pipeline, we held up these bandanas. So it became a cool visual that we kind of rallied around. This is Neil Young at a protest in DC. He's getting his pipeline fighter bandana on. And so we made a poster out of that idea, which was kind of fun, and got a lot of people excited. A lot of people had this poster, and it was like a 18 by 24 screen print. And anybody that was part of the movement and the effort definitely got it and felt really stoked when they saw that. And so posters, as a thing, as they also allow for ways to use what an organization stands for to really visualize what they stand for. This Nebraska Appleseed organization is a nonprofit, nonpartisan public interest law firm who does lots of legal stuff. And so I started organizing this poster show to work with a bunch of designers to visualize, their core values, the issues that they work on, the things that are important to the organization. We screen printed them. We had them available at their annual fundraising event, and we sold them to raise money so that the organization could, get some additional funds. Didn't make a ton of money, but the point was that it was investing in a way to visually tell the story of the organization and get people inspired about what this organization was all about. People bought them, put them in their houses. We have lots of state senators that have, copies of these posters that are hanging in their office in the Capitol. Seen them around lots of places. So we've done it I organized it for 7 years, and now it's been organized by another lady for the last 2. So definitely just a fun way to bring visuals and messaging and just other ideas, help them tell their story in a way that a bunch of lawyers aren't used to doing. They're used to, talking about laws and trying to make sure that immigrants don't get deported. And we did a bunch of shows just to bring in the community, help them reach different audiences. And then the last thing that we did was we pulled them all together and made a book. So we had 7 years of posters for this book. There was about 60 posters. There were 30 different designers that were involved over those years. So it was a nice way to kind of bring it all together and have this good project that the organization could talk about, and with their donors and funders, and just ways to kind of build that community presence. So aside from working with organizations, also we'll work with groups and organizers on art projects. This one was Manifest Justice. It was in Los Angeles in 2015. It was organized after Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson, and several other Black men were killed by police. So this guy who I had worked with for many years, he was Shepard Fairey's publicist and helped commission the Hope poster in 2008. And so he became a good contact just for working on cool projects with. He would do all these big kind of large scale art shows. So this one I did all the branding for, and a bunch of signage. And he organized all the artists in the space to bring in all these really great, awesome pieces of art. They had all this cultural programming where you learned about prison spending and the situations with private prisons, police brutality, just all of the challenging things that are facing communities. And this idea of we got to organize around these really heavy issues and do positive things. This was just a way to bring art into a space and bring people into a space and have all these organizations kind of talk about what they were doing. And these are some icons that were made to kind of talk about the different programming that was going on. So that was a fun little branding project. This other organization is in Omaha, a very community-focused arts organization. And so one of the things that has been nice too about this, they have a physical building. So partnering with them over the years, we got to do signage and kind of help the vision of what Brigitte was all about. Brigitte is amazing. And so I think, working in this space too, I meet a lot of great people, and the idea of working with people who are really passionate about making their communities better. North Omaha is a historically Black community in Omaha, which is segregated. They have lacking city services. They have, years, decades of redlining and systemic racism that has made that community, presented it with a lot of challenges because the city has sort of looked the other way as it has been able to just kind of deteriorate and not have the investment and all of the hip stuff that has happened in other parts of the city. And so Brigitte is from Detroit originally, and she moved here. And she started this organization, put it in North Omaha, and has used the arts to bring in other parts of the community and to really push for positive change in that part of the city. This was a lot of like, when we were doing some of the, looking at the process of design, we looked at a lot of the history of the area and 1963 meeting flyers, how communication was done, back in the day, colored tinted paper, big bold type. Big bold type never goes out of style. And so we used this set of materials that we did and found in the research part of the process. It informed a lot of the stuff that we did in terms of event flyers. These were a couple, they had art shows every first Friday, I think, in the beginning. We did mailers and kind of talked about all the positive stuff that was happening in the community because a lot of people didn't know about it. This was in 2014. It was a pretty big year. They had all these artists come in, they raised some money. They had a tool library, they had a community garden, they had a space to come together and have a meal and a conversation. Just a really positive place overall. That has been really good for the city and just bringing different parts of the city into North Omaha, having North Omaha have getting more investment, getting more positivity, outreach to the youth, all sorts of really good stuff that this organization has been able to do. And then finally, we do some self-initiated projects. We haven't really this year because we've been so busy with work projects, but we always try to have, me and the network of people that I work with, some sort of project that's just kind of ours that we're doing. This is our space. This is where I'm at right now under the round and round sign in historic Dundee. This is the office. This is the old layout of the office. It's a little different now, but it still has this basic look. Yeah, I drink a lot of coffee in this space. And so this space has let us kind of exist in Omaha and work with a lot of Omaha nonprofits and community groups, but then also do projects out of here. This was a poster site that we did after 2016, where we basically curated all of the best posters that we saw online in response to the election and where we wanted the country to go, and put them on a site for easy access for people to either download them, buy them, share them. So these were just some of those collection of posters just from people all over that were making posters in response to the situation. Just there's lots of creative response to terrible times, and so a lot of good art because the times have been so terrible. This was a series of posters that I was doing as a response to really specific things in the news. The We Call BS was around gun violence. You Are Not Alone just was a mental health focused poster. Strike for unions who were striking for rights. Yes We Care was an immigration focused thing. Some of these you had to be following the news to really get. And then yeah, the poster is definitely, this was about gerrymandering. This is about global warming. Of all the projects that are going on, the poster is a great way to kind of lend some time. So this was a Planned Parenthood poster that I just did pro bono, paid for the printing, and then they had it auctioned off and sold to raise some money. But it's a good way just in this space of making visual content and sharing it online, in person, trying to get messages out there and moving the needle in a way. This is the great Ernie Chambers. He is term limited again in our state legislature. He's from North Omaha. He has been fighting to stop the death penalty for decades. He's just a rad guy who has inspired lots of young people to run for office. Nebraska has a lot of young millennials who actually serve in the state legislature, which is awesome. And so as the old guard of progressive leaders steps aside, do you feel like we have some good young ones coming in? And so really I kind of think that design is pretty applicable to anything. And I feel very fortunate that I've been able to apply it to the things I've applied it to. And really, I think graphic design breaks it down and shouts it out loud. The message that it shouts can be anything really, and that's up to you, the maker or the designer or the artist, wherever you want to be. And this is all kind of coming together in the last 10 years. I decided that I wanted to make a book about all the projects that had been worked on. And so these are the sort of 5 tenets or categories that all the work fit in, as the type of work that I wanted to make when I set out, and was guided by the idea of, having a career that it could be free to choose what I wanted to do. I wanted to work on things that were in the cause of social change, social justice. I wanted to work within a community and work for the community in a way, and then use design to push ideas and use it as a power, as a tool to make change. And then, I mean, graphic design, you can have a lot of fun with it and be very hopeful with it. And so the book is almost done. Again, been too busy to finish it, but we'll have it out there at some point. And so, yeah, that is a very fast 75 slides of stuff.
Great, thanks, Justin. So a large number of our attendees today are members of the AIGA Student Club. And so, as you all know, you've already sent your questions to us. And so Andy will read through those. But of course, if you want to ask in person or, with your own voice, by all means, you're more than welcome to do that. So we can start with Andy, and but you all jump in or raise your hand if you'd like to also ask a question, or if something else came up during the presentation.
Yeah, as Rebecca said, there are plenty of questions, and those of you who are in the audience, please feel free. But we do have one actually in the chat I think is very important before we get to a lot of graphic design questions, is what was the name of your punk band? I'm sorry, that's from Trev and Carol.
It was called, it had several names. It was called Hoot Nanny, it was called M80, and then it was called Rocket FM. Those are the names. Thing about the punk band, like being creative, I think you go through a process where you're terrible. And so, but it is like the spectrum, it applies, right? So I think like I worked out a lot of like the terrible ideas in that punk band, and then it wasn't like I was starting over with terrible ideas in design. It was kind of like I could apply those, like, oh, look at all this bad shit we did when we were in this band. Let's not make those mistakes again. So yeah, just as an aside, but those were the names.
And this is kind of my question following up on that. Is that kind of where you started? Is that kind of the turning point you feel when you were in this punk band that kind of brought you into this social awareness?
Yeah, it was definitely. Like we were in Lincoln, which is a college town. There were just lots of politics in the scene of kids that went to those shows. There were lots of like food activists and sustainability activists. There was a lot of anti-war kids, anti-death penalty kids. There was like a Black Panther, a very notable Black Panther case from the 80s in Omaha. And like, there was lots of organizing around like trying to get this case looked at again. So there was like specific Nebraska issues that like, I was just from a small town and like, didn't really know much about stuff. So we were exposed to lots of activism and kids who were engaged and just like a lot more worldly and just like into trying to do stuff with the music, and then just like organizing outside of the scene of kids into like some of the nonprofit organizations that were in the city.
So following up on that, from Cabrina Alviar, she has a question. How do you start looking for nonprofit work, and what are some reputable nonprofit? I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. Or how do you even find these reputable, organizations? Are you just going after what you're passionate about, or are you really digging in and searching for them?
Yeah, like initially it was, that's what it helped to know kids who were like, oh, I volunteer for this organization, or oh, I'm going to this rally, or I support this organization, or I know that someone who works there. like the Nebraska Appleseed projects, those, they approached me, but it was a kid that we used to go to shows together. He's like the development coordinator there now and tries to raise money for them. And so he knew I wanted to like use design in a way with issues and stuff. And he's like, well, we work on all this stuff and we're terrible at like telling people about it. So maybe we do like something that we can use design. And so we both kind of like came up with the idea of the poster show. And so I knew him, I trusted him, and I, you know, because through him, I found like that the organization that he was a part of was really cool. And so I think like that is going back to the size of Omaha too, and Omaha Lincoln, it's not super big where you can kind of get lost in it, but it's not small where like nothing's happening on like a large enough scale. Because in Nebraska Appleseed, it's not like they have huge budgets, but they have money to spend on marketing and communications and development and making sure that they're, you know, getting membership and people to get engaged with legislation that they're trying to pass. So, you know, there's money that goes to like communications people. Like if you're gonna try to get a petition drive happening, you need to pay people to get sign-ups, you need to pay people to get like how that kind of gets all packaged and stuff. So like design is just kind of a part of all that mix of messaging and getting your message out to the people that you want to like care.
Maybe on the topic of getting that message out, I have a question from Alast Kamalabadi. She says, in today's world, when we are exposed to so much stimuli and information, how can we use design to cut through this inundation and apathy, or essentially cutting through the noise, if you will?
Yeah, I think that, I wish I knew that. I think like that when I was in school, they always talked about you see like 3,500 messages a day. Probably, I mean, now with social media, I don't know if that, I've not seen like the new stat, but like you're always kind of inundated with being sold something. And so I think in my mind, I was like, well, design is used to sell stuff or like push ideas. Like we just need more of the other kind. I mean, we live in a consumer society, which is all fine and good to some extent, but like if there's just like more of the type of design that, you know, is advocating for a more just or sustainable world, I think like that is the type of work that I think is like really interesting. And then it kind of just comes down to like, well, and how does the work look? Because you have good design, you have bad design, you have design that's done by like really talented people, you have design that's not, you have trendy design. So the idea of like, how do you reach who you want to reach? So then it comes down to your target audience, like is it older, is it younger? Is it the like internet age of design that is lots of memes and GIFs? I mean, when I worked for the Obama campaign, and like at that time, it was like, I don't know if that was the first election with Twitter in 2012. I wasn't involved in 2008. But like the graphics that we were pushing out, it was like we made them all textured and layered and gritty, and they all kind of were targeted specifically to like either women or Latino voters. And like we had like specific things that we were trying to do, and like it just looked different because like everything in that apparatus of Facebook at the time was super flat. And so like you have some stuff that's like, it was like just like a thing like, well, let's just make everything layered and textured so it stands out more. And so just like you start to think about the actual ways that you execute design. Like, you know, there's, that's why I think it's helpful to be connected to both worlds where you like have the design community, like, oh, now we're talking about responsive web design and everything's flat because everything's got to load fast. Everything has to look good on a phone. And then you have, you know, the activist community of like what messages resonate, and the generational stuff is becoming such a, like, how do you communicate with baby boomers, like, okay, boomer, and like all of these like cultural like things and digs. And then there's like the aspects of, you know, trolling the far right. And it's just like, it's crazy, but how do you reach through all of that? it always kind of comes back to like who's your audience and who are your supporters. Like if you're a organization working with an organization now that has like lots of Instagram followers, they're younger, and so like I am working for them, and it's like they have their vision of what they want their self to look like. So it's like we kind of steer the design to like make sure that like they're excited about it and like their image is what they're presenting and want to put out there. How that kind of reaches people, it kind of remains to be seen in terms of, we've gone through the infographic craze of like all this illustrated data, and then now GIFs, like that guy Yossi that I was working with, we did the Manifest Justice campaign. He is all like into memes and GIFs and making everything move now. I think everybody's just kind of trying to reach something and trying to get that like click or donate, which I don't know ultimately if that's like a great goal, but like it's the goal that's to be had at this moment. Hopefully it changes. I mean, I haven't seen like a physical poster aside from the ones that we have in our space in a while. Aside from like my Instagram feed. The square is the new like screen print.
Which is funny because things used to be kind of in a square, and now, I mean, when we're talking about digital formats, like the TV used to be a square, kind of.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Now it's kind of circling back. Kind of going off that, you may have already answered this question, but from Devin Gonzalez, when presenting work to a client, do you separate your activism work from your more corporate work, or is it kind of all just together?
Yeah, I don't really have any corporate work anymore. It's all in some way, like if people want to like, because like when I had a regular advertising job for like 7 years where I kind of learned how to work in the business of this, like working with printers, working with developers, working in teams with account service, copywriters, traffic managers, the workflow of the day-to-day. And so, because I didn't really go to a good design school. And so that experience, like I learned how to do the mechanics of a career in graphic design. But like when I left, like I basically had 2 jobs. It was like the 9-to-5 job. And thankfully, like it was pretty much 9 to 5. It wasn't like a work you tell you die kind of ad agency, like some are. So I would work 9 to 5 and then I would come home and I would work, another 6 hours on my own stuff, or like stuff with nonprofits that I was just like, hey, I'll make these flyers for you for free, or give me a couple $100 and I'll do a logo, or I'll do your website and maintain your website. And so I was doing all of this other stuff that just kind of kept spiraling and growing because like I wanted to be like a community activist designer and be like the person that community organizations came to for design stuff. And doing that long enough, like I had like enough work to just be like, okay, I'm going to go do my own thing and I'm just going to show this work. And this is the type of work that I want to do. So I didn't have a portfolio that had any of my other corporate stuff because I didn't want to do any of that. And this Bold Nebraska project, which was the pipeline fighter project, happened at that time. And then, I mean, it was like timing really was everything. It seemed like lots of people contacted me that had been either saw stuff or they were starting things, and timing was just right. And so I was working with Participant Media, who was out in Los Angeles, and then a startup in Omaha did Eli Pariser's TED Talk slides. That was like a project that I had like early on. And like that world of people just kind of, seems like everybody knows everybody else. And so just through contacts and networks, like the work just kind of kept going.
So you mentioned you had to start somewhere. You had to make money in the beginning, I'm assuming. Yeah. So a question from Vanessa Hernandez. She asks, how do you make sure you're not being taken advantage of as a designer, maybe starting out at least?
Yeah, I think like it's good to get, I mean, having an agency job experience was good to understand how to work with people when it comes to money and projects, and formulating some kind of like formal documents of like statements of work, what's your invoices, like how you kind of scope this project. This is the scope, this is what I'm going to do. this is how long it's going to take. I'm going to do 3 rounds of revision. You will get like 4 options, like even like the very tactile things, which I really like doing, just like the mechanics of how to make like a design project happen, which to, get more complicated with websites and like planning, and there's sitemap, wireframes, design, and there's development resources. And so being very clear up front about everything that kind of happens. I mean, now it's in that, that spot where, I've been doing this long enough where it's like, there's a certain amount of like people think you know what you're doing because you're 40, which isn't always true. And it is a lot easier to take advantage of younger designers. Thankfully, I never got taken advantage of personally. I know people that have, and it sucks. It's not cool at all. There are some people that I just can't believe, like, not getting paid or just being jerks. So it's tough because like you want to make sure that if you're like projects where, okay, you should pay me 50% up front. When it's done, I deliver all the files, then you pay me the rest. Like, even just like kind of getting down like how you want your payments to go. And AIGA has lots of resources, like in terms of like getting paid, like making sure you're behaving ethically as a designer, you're, coaching and instructing your client on how to behave and act ethically with designers, where it's like, this is your work, this is your time that you're putting into this, you should get paid for this. Like, it's not like you only get paid if I like what you did, like that's not how it works. And then you can kind of get into like, I charge hourly, I charge by the project, I do logos, this is how much this is, I do a website, this is how much this is. And I think just as long as you're upfront about that, that helps the process. And sometimes you're just like, I'm getting this vibe from you, and I don't think we're going to be a good fit working together. It's easier to do when you have work because you can be like, this is the type of work that I do. This is my style. This is who I like to work with. And if you don't like fit into any of that, like we should probably not work together because you're not going to jive with everybody. And I've had clients in this space of like the do-gooderism that like it's just not a good fit, and the project kind of sucks. But we get through it and on to the next one, and we just don't work together. And there's clients that have been around for like 10 years. So it's all learning and giving and taking. Hopefully you just make sure you get paid. Because otherwise you got to go work like at a real job.
Nobody wants that. We have a question in the chat from Alaska Malabadi. She asked, is there a blacklist out there of exploitative companies or clients? Anything like that?
Or a Google Doc or something.
Or Google Doc.
Yeah. So there's a designer, Jessica Walsh, who they run a firm in New York, and they are definitely trying to be more mindful of types of like projects that they do and work with. I don't know of any kind of list. I know that they put out lists around with the Black Lives Matter protests, just like, I think it was like just favorable companies. Omaha had like a list that this guy put out of like companies not to shop at that were like hostile. So it's like, I don't know of a blacklist overall, but like, there are companies definitely that I wouldn't work with, but yeah, that's a good one.
Is it about doing your research?
Yeah, doing your research. Because yeah, sometimes new startups where you have no idea in terms of like the type of work that they do, or it's definitely like tricky trying to land good clients and work with good clients to make sure that you're being treated fairly.
Have you ever had to get legal assistance?
I haven't. I have had friends who have, though.
So I have a question, if I can jump in. I love that list that you created about 10 years ago, list of principles to work by or live and work by potentially. So I wonder if, has that list changed over time? And if the world is getting you down, is it also a source of inspiration, or does it feed you? Does it remind you why you're doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I think so. I think like, it's always nice to refer back to that because, sometimes you're just like, I just want a project that's delightful. And so sometimes, you can refer to that and be like, oh yeah, this is why I was sort of starting to do this work in the first place. It's been 5 years now since we started this space that I'm in, which is called Round and Round. And at that time, I added a 12th one because I wanted work that was free to be weird, just to have a little bit more fun. And, you know, sometimes kerning and leading and code and colors and builds and Pantones, it's like too many numbers. So you just kind of want to have clients that are like cool if you just do some weird stuff. Or a space that allows for that, lots of antics. So you can keep it fun, because design is a pretty creative space. So it's typically very loud in the office. You listen to music all day. We're in a neighborhood, so there's good places to get lunch and support local food places and businesses. And before the pandemic, we had tried to have like events here. It's not a huge space, so there were typically people who were running for office. We never had an open house, and I regret doing that now because I don't know if we will for a while. We were always going to have one around the 5-year mark, and then this happened. So at some point we'll have a party.
6 years.
6 years.
The new 5.
We have another question in the chat from Devin Gonzalez. Devin, do you want to ask the question yourself?
Sure. First of all, thank you for speaking with all of us. We all appreciate it. But my question is, a lot of your work deals with some like heavy content, obviously. So how do you keep the subject matter from like you bringing it home or it affecting your mental health, for lack of a better word?
Yeah. The good thing about the design, like the process of design, is that you're always typically doing something. So like, even though some of the issues are pretty heavy and like the content of itself, like I've learned to kind of just quickly get into like, well, now we have a job to do and just do the job. Like this organization I'm working with now, like they deal with a lot of police violence issues and you know, everybody on that side is like super passionate about like, we need to do this because, you know, lives are on the line. But even from their perspective, it's like, okay, now we're all in our roles, like data researcher, messaging person, web developer, designer. And it's like, helps to try to like feel like you're constructively doing something because, yeah, I mean, I certainly go through my moments of like being like, oh, this is terrible. I mean, I think like after 2016, it was all the network of people. Like, I mean, it was rough. Like everybody thought the world was coming to an end, and that wasn't wrong. So, I think like the actual, you know, it's the same way. Like, well, shit, I'm gonna go to a protest because got to do something.
So you feel like you're doing something about it, so that kind of relieves that stress or that worry a little bit?
A little bit. I mean, like when the pandemic happened, like I was super depressed for like a month maybe. And it was, I would tell some of my clients, it's like, well, it's nice to be able to kind of like focus on actually doing something rather than just like feeling like you have to be afraid of humans and stay inside. So I think the constructive things of like getting through like down moments is always like, well, shit, now we got to do something. So like, let's turn up the music and get after it. Like that can be pretty empowering. And it's like, yeah, like it feels like a design career can be you can like wield power visually. And like that James Vittori, like a designer I really like, that's how he kind of talks about design. And so that's why when design is like used at its best, it does that. It doesn't do it all the time, it takes work, but like definitely has that potential.
Right. So I know we're almost out of time, unfortunately, but thank you, Justin, so much. We have such gratitude for you spending your time with us this evening. So one really quick question, and then Roman will close us out. But I just wanted to ask, what are you reading, watching, listening to? You know, film, podcast, publication, graphic novel, etc. That's sort of giving you life right now. Anything you can recommend?
Yeah, so someone asked where they could get the book. It'll be at that URL when it's ready. There's nothing up there now. I seriously love music. Um, I listen to KEXP every day, and they are my gateway into all of this amazing stuff. So there's this band called Salt, which no one knows who they are, but they put out amazing music that is like really made for this moment. So yeah, like I think I've been getting into the Beastie Boys more because they put out their book, and they have their special, which is really awesome. And so I think like anything that feels just really terrible, having like a good new album really just goes super far. And there's a punk band called Idols that is relatively new. I think last year they had a really great album. We saw them in Kansas City. And it seems like that is, like everything evolves, right? Like, and there are all these punk bands that I love, and they kind of like, you know, runs their course. And like Idols is like the new punk stuff. Like they put out an album, it just feels of the moment. It still feels like punk, but it feels like new. And it feels like someone like just threw some cold water on you. Like, this is what punk is now. And it's great. So I think like there's a lot of community building that happens in like music scenes, and a lot of like, well, just do it yourself, which I love about music scenes. There's a good music scene here in Omaha, which lots of people are a part of and try to support that. And we've done, you know, super discounted work for over the years, just to try to like push that cultural force along. It's super important.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, everybody. This was nice.
If you wanted to learn more about native land acknowledgement, there are a couple websites that you can visit that are on the screen. We also ask that you complete a quick online survey. Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Be safe. Stay well.